Hey, good people. I wanted to do this first iterative distilling conversation around cause groups. And these thoughts and practices are all my own. I'm a regional practitioner of a cause group centered around child welfare. So I've been absorbing and practicing and doing and imagining the proliferation of cause groups within our region and around the nation and what uh, their importance, their power, their structure, and that ultimately their sustainability for a long-term vision. So I'm going to be using a couple of defining terms. So this is a dot, a node, or a soul. So for you and me, we're both dots. Jesus is a dot, and Jesus on Earth was the largest dot. So the largest dot is has the most capacity to love, is the most healthy, is the most free and liberated, has nothing to hide, prove, or fear. And the smallest dot is potentially the most traumatized, the most hurt, the most wounded. And the goal within this cause group context is to help increase dots, size of dots, both within the group and as an extension, unleashing love for those that we are serving. Now, dots are ultimately unknown. We don't know the size of our dots. We can try to feel it, but there's so much about our own lives that we don't know about. So many things unhealed. There's so much that other people don't know about us. 99% of ourselves people don't know. And so I'm just humbly saying that when we think about size of dots, it is unknowable. Only God knows. So that is the reason for grace for from God and for each other. And this is a line. A line indicates relationship. These are different types of relationships: no relationship, acquaintance, know each other a little bit better, conflict or tension, or deep intimacy and trust between each other is the thick line. I'm going to share with you an example of a cause group that you may or may not know about. So, this cause group abolished slavery, the British slave trade, in 1807. So, um, 3.1 million slaves were transported and traded. 2.7 million actually arrived. So, that's a lot of death and a lot of pain and suffering. A lot of folks who needed liberation. And some people saw it and some people cared. And many people know the story of William Wilberforce. It's a lot easier to tell the story of the Lone Ranger than it is of the dense network. So, he would take politicians and rich people to the slave docks and have them smell and see and know and taste what slavery looks like, and then just continue to push that flywheel to try to abolish it in all of these different ways. But it wasn't Wilberforce that did it. He did not abolish the slave trade. The Clapham sect did. And he was one of those people that was a part of the Clapham sect that was a catalytic leader within it that really helped to move the ball. So that's the image. Slave trade can be abolished through a dense network. And any cause that you care about, that I care about, that a region needs love to be unleashed into, happens through a densifying network. So a lot of these themes come from this book, Network Power. The thinker, John Seale, is great. In the thesis, it says the main actor on the stage of lasting cultural change, there's that sustainability part, is the dense network. So goal, densify the network. Is the image that he uses, is Archimedes' lever be able to pull down and move any world. And there's four elements. Number one, all dense networks require a catalytic leader. These leaders are meant to be collaborative in nature, and they are rare to find. So, but they can be trained. They can have boot camps, and all so much of it comes down to their trust in God, in the way that they facilitate relationships. The lever is the cause or the aim of the network's mission. So in that context, it was slavery. In the context that I currently work in, it is four goals around child welfare. The fulcrum is the densifying network with a shared commitment to the mission. So that means the people. These are our people. We like each other to a degree, and we have a shared mission. So these are our people. That's the fulcrum. And then the world is the bounded field or geography where the mission is embodied. So For slavery, it was the British Empire. With this child welfare cause group, it's Greater Dayton. One element of a dense network is its balancing sociability and solidarity. Uh, Sociability is likability, solidarity is feeling on mission to each other. So there's a way to assess over here kind of where a network is at. Um, if someone's super social but not have high solidarity, that's like maybe a bowling league. High solidarity, no sociability is like a mafia. We're on the same mission, but we're not don't have enough thick lines to not kill you. But communal, fragmented is weak density, everyone's scattered, but communal is what is our goal, is to assess the density of the network so that we like each other and are on mission together amongst all the different logos, egos, and personalities. So much of this has to do with proximity or helping people move into deeper relational proximity, but also physical proximity with each other. So proximity equals density, and I'm not going to talk about this very much, but just so you know, this is all, the social network science is a growing field that kind of tries to measure and assess a lot of these things. So P equals number of connections divided by maximum possible connections. So in this example, all of the nodes or all the dots are not connected. P equals 0. Yesterday, I gathered 11 Christ followers who care about child welfare that are all leading, and P went up yesterday because we all spent time together for 90 minutes, and many of us were tearful together. We had a lot of trust in the vibe and the environment, balanced that sociability, solidarity really well. Now, Clapham is a space outside of London where they live, they work, they play, they worship, they did all their things together, they rubbed shoulders together. So P increased a lot because of the density of proximity of where they are. So since we live in such like a divided world, how can we push up against that to increase proximity so that proximity can continue to increase? Now this actually can't be measured. Well unless we have like tools and devices, but we know that the idea is to then increase density. If we could know, if technology or otherwise could tell us what that is, that'd be awesome. We're not there yet. But for true collaboration to happen, for the world to be moved, we need relationships that are built on trust, and trust is built on time, and not just any time, but really intentional time. We model this after Jesus. Amen. Thank God. He came here and he invited people in to being with him. So they said, okay, let's increase density for 2 years. Let's walk, talk, eat, learn from each other. Imagine if you and I did that for 2 years. Now imagine that you and I were sent out on a mission of risk where we were asked to not take our extra pair of sandals, walking stick, money bag, extra food, or anything, and knock on people's doors to go heal and cast out demons. That level of thickness between us in that adventure would then draw back into the collective. 2 by 2 is important. So density in, density sent out, density back in continues to build, and that's what moved the whole world was Jesus' sacrifice as he built that dense network and showed us how we can be liberated. So it always starts pretty much with low density and then it moves to high density, but it's not a straight path. It's not this easy. It's very meandering, and and it requires a commitment. And so the next phase of this kind of presentation are some of maybe the mechanics to help increase density over time, because often a scattered network looks like this, disconnected or something. And it typically ends like this. We might be all in a circle, but there might be dotted lines between us with a catalytic leader kind of remaining in that spot. So again, if this is the beginning, this might be one phase, and there's so many phases as we can commit to the sustainability of a cause in a dense network. Notice that there's conflict there. This is one of the skills of the leaders, to develop an ecosystem where trust helps smoothen out conflict lines. We're not all going to love each other to a certain degree, but we all have to see value in each other and lean into that process of forgiveness and resolving conflict the way that Jesus does. And that's hard and messy work, but that's what Jesus modeled. So let's do it. And then that creates ultimately high density. We can do this. We can do this. Leadership, again, is such a pinnacle. So I wanted to just mention that this book, Swing, is what John says is almost like the manual of this kind of leader. And I'm just going to say the first couple of sentences you can read. High performance teams, so a high performance network, requires a special kind of leader that's iterated in the Network Power book, that it's not about the leader, but the team, or more precisely, the leader in service to the team. So it's to reframe your thinking about leadership from an individual concept to a team experience. Swing is similar to flow or being in the zone or zone leadership, where swing is related to rowing. Imagine all different varying levels of strengths, ability to endure suffering, all these different personalities, all having to have the highest quality attunement of each other to endure pain at the exact same synchronicity to beat the other boat. That's what swing is. It is that leader, the co-axman in service to those to that team, to love them, to know them, and to help them be awesome. And the book really fleshes out what that means. So the source of the power, when thinking about network power, is not the leader, but the leader's role to facilitate the power that's in the room. And the focus then is on the flourishing, the the increasing of dots in the group, and then as we try to increase the size of dots outside of the group. Just yesterday, in that I know that many of the people in child welfare leading are super weary. We need to care for them. We need to nurture them so that they can nurture and care for more people. You can't give what you don't have. Another kind of principled, foundational, it feels like body of knowledge is rested in this book, Rooting for Rivals. This is all case studies of awesome kingdom collaboration and generosity. The matrix that Peter and Chris have created is this one, where on the left it's kingdom or clan. We can live in one of those postures. Or below is scarcity and abundance. The goal is all of us show up to a space and show up to relationships in a kingdom and abundance way where we're generous. That's deep work. That means that we have to take a scarcity clan mindset where I care about my logo, I care about the time, the talent, and treasure that's flowing in and flowing out, and being open-handed and tithe a certain amount of my energy to the collective to see kingdom abundance, to walk that out. And that's hard. That's hard for many people, and it takes a lot of skill to facilitate all of those energies and logos and egos. And it's just one of the examples in the book is how the campus ministry folks came together because they knew that they would be stronger together. So instead of saying, "Oh, you're in my territory on my campus, you're on mine," now they retreat together. I don't know if it's still going on, but they used to every year to say, "Okay, every campus, every student, we have this collective mission that's beyond any of our logos. So I'm going to lay my logo and ego aside to believe in kingdom abundance for the greater mission, which is that John 17 call to know that Jesus will come when that happens." So that's what this is so much about, is showing to the world that it's possible, that we can walk out kingdom abundance together. Here's another part of this. We gather in groups, and then we ideally use that to stimulate times with people individually meeting together, and then we gather again. It can be maybe easy to draw people into a first gathering to get people there, but to keep people at the table, we need to help people stay at the table. That's a sustainability part of it. And I found that this book has given me so many nuggets that I took all the cliff notes and now I superimpose them on any gathering that I do. And here are some of the principles that I'm going to lay out and how vital they are, because we want any gathering to be as high quality value as possible, which requires a lot of intention. So here it is. Connection doesn't happen on its own. You have to design your gatherings for the kind of connections that you want to create. High sociability, high solidarity. Can be difficult to balance, especially in this busy world. So here are some of, drill down on your purpose. Every element of a gathering, connect back to the purpose, back to the why. Who, define your who. Kind exclusion means decreasing the complexity that's in the room so to increase intimacy. Each person pulls on a thread that can lead to higher sociability or solidarity, or can maybe be distracting. It's not unkind, it's kind. Where, embodiment. So our group yesterday met at Children's Services in our urban space, and there's on average 30 calls a day of abuse and neglect, and there's so many visitations that happen every single day there. So we walked through the visitation, we sat there, we saw caseworkers, we embodied the space. Comics say that the space it 80% of the job is done by the space. So embodying your space is important. When your event does not start when the gathering starts. Your gathering starts in the moment of discovery because people are building their expectations and curiosity. And to clarify it, you provide teasers on the way and make the purpose so clear and defined, and maybe give a little agenda and all this stuff. I'm trying to draw you into reading this book because I think you'll find it of such value. Protect your hosts or your guests. Don't be a chill host. There's an awesome story about this professor of adaptive leadership that I really hope that you read. But it's all about how if you relinquish the power of the flow of the gathering, the anxiety of someone else in the group will superimpose the intention and go in a direction that maybe isn't where the goal of the gathering is meant to be. So protect your guests by being really mindful of a lot of different kinds of structure. Equalize your guests. There is power dynamics in every single room, every single gathering. What's meant to This element for me is helping all people to know each other as equal humans at the base of the cross. And we do that by, you know, through openness and vulnerability and storytelling and seeing each other not as logos or egos or presidents or, whatever, that we see each other as people and the value added that we can give. And then ultimately connecting them. You want to have host to guest relationships, go to guest to guest to guest to guest to guest relationships with intention. So there's lots of elements in how to do that as well. Ultimately, you want to create a temporary alternative world that draws people back. So all these different elements can make people say, oh man, and you've probably been in those spaces where it's like, it was transformative, but you've been in other gatherings where it's like, dang, this was such a waste of time. We want to use the elements of creating an alternative world that people are drawn back to that feels more like home, more like heaven or whatever, because everyone is being cared for and nurtured. Never start a funeral with logistics. If you're, the story is this is about openings and closings. So everyone was sad, uncle died, sitting in the chairs, everybody was waiting, there was so much energy, everyone was grieving, and they said, thank you all for coming. Lunch after the service can be found here. And then the deflation. We do this when we have gatherings where the first thing we do is, thank our sponsors. The purpose in drilling down to the why of why we're gathering, that's the opening. Being prayerful, starting with us, we start with music of childhood and songs to connect our guests, to draw in the purpose. And then a closing ceremony is helping people reflect in and then take what they've reflected on and put it into practice out. So there's a couple of elements that the art of gathering uses that I think build density in gatherings and between gatherings. They're really important. That is such an important element of a cause group. I think liberating structures is something very similar that's kind of taken principles of the art of gathering and has put it into microstructures, is what they call, that anybody can use. So I'll tell you the quick story. Henry and Keith were executive coaches. They found that their gatherings and coaching sessions kind of like were duds, as many are. And so they started to experiment with different ways to liberate what was inside people in the room. And they cared about all these different ways to maximize the efficiency and the impact of that gathering. So they started experimenting. And for 10 years, they experimented with microstructures. And then they wrote a book about it. And there's 33. And so this is an example of a microstructure. 1, 2, 4, all. So in our gathering yesterday, I set a prompt. I said, what's a long range goal that you have and what's a need? So we did this twice in 2 different settings. So when the goal, everyone wrote down and reflected on their long range goal or dream that God has given them for a minute. Then they shared it with one other person. They paired up for 2 minutes, each shared 1 minute. And then the 2 pairs got together, so it was 4 people, and then they shared it together as four. Um, and then and then it was all. Then we all kind of shared and reflected on the themes that we heard. It liberated what was inside of people in a very structured way. That's one of 33. So their app is amazing. Um, Pairing these together, I think, will help any gathering accelerate the thickening of lines between folks. Now, I just want to share another case example of a real life thing. Slavery was 1807. That's back then. This densifying network is now, which I revere so much. The Christian Alliance for Orphans started in about 2004 when all these people surrounding child welfare said, "What do we? What are you doing?" And so what they said was, "We need to drop our logos and egos to come together to see the bigger kingdom of how we can care for the 440,000 kids in foster care plus, and how that drills down to the county level." And not only are we going to drop our logos and egos um, for the kids, but I get God's inviting to do that for myself. And as I do that for myself in a trusting relationship with God, we get to do that with each other. And as a result, it pours out into kids and families. And I've just been a witness of this working on the national level as they've densified the network of folks who have poured into global orphan care, domestic orphan care, foster care system, and child welfare, and all those kind of things. So what started in 2004 today is now a global network of 40 emerging networks. Think of that, those cause groups, how powerful that is, with 20,000 plus churches, and now a national network that I swim in a lot. So it's 100 plus organizations. One of those is who I currently serve with, and an annual summit that they have where 4,000 to 8,000 people from every state in 40 countries in a good year descend into this place. And for me, it feels like home. Such high sociability, such high solidarity, all trying to care for the most vulnerable amongst us. But we're doing so in a spirit of friendship and rest. I will really want to give like a huge kudos to what I think is I have witnessed to be such an amazing catalytic leader of this network is Jed Medifin. Cannot sing his praises enough. I've been listening to his podcast, Justice in the Inner Life, which is all about how do you sustain personally a life of justice and mercy and pay over the span of a lifetime without leaving wreckage for your family or your organization, doing it sustainably in a spirit of health. And so it's so good. My favorite story is how International Justice Mission is arguably one of the most effective human trafficking agents. And their VP of spiritual formation, I was in one of his sessions, Jim Martin, and he said that every day they ask their driven and ambitious people for 30 minutes to take their white knuckles off of the steering wheel and to abide with God. And he said more gets done in that 30 minutes than the rest of the 7.5 to 9.5 hours throughout the day. That's their secret sauce, is the sustainability of their people as they densify their human trafficking network. And they also say that they are not a human trafficking organization. They are a Christian formation organization that does human trafficking. I think that's a really important distinction. Any cause group is a community of Christian formation that focuses on child welfare, that focuses on marriage or domestic abuse or leadership or youth mentoring or in all of the above. That it is we're doing this together in a way that this is how we're living out the gift that God has given us to do the work. So Jed has this amazing, you can go to cafo.org/souls. He's created this CAFO strategic plan for thriving souls, which is what his whole staff and many of the bridge organizations adhere to. And this is the description. No factor is more critical to the success of an organization, or in this case, a movement, or your organization, or your soul, than the vitality of the people within it. All else flows from it. Creativity, attentiveness, hope, love, endurance, and 100 other traits essential to success rise naturally from a thriving soul. In this, and only in this, can we embody the vision we seek to affect in the world. Oh man, those are some good sentences. Isn't that true? to believe in your soul that the yoke is easy, the burden is light, and to embody and live it, which requires us Sabbathing, taking our hands off of the wheels, and creating a community of transformation for thriving souls. In my mind, that's what cause groups are, is to help us rest in that together. Now, if Jad's kind of the global director of CAFO, Jason Weber is over the domestic child welfare. I would listen to his foster movement podcast every week, and at the end, he would always say, "We're so thankful for the work that you do in child welfare. We're here to help you do it until there's more than enough." And every time he said that, I would cry. and and so birthed a couple years later the More Than Enough initiative, which is all about no matter what cause you're in. Let's say it's marriage. There is more than enough resources, care, love, and support for there to be more than enough attentiveness for the divorce rate to go from 50% to 5%. Or for the 70 kids that age out of the foster care system in our county every year, that all of them could be adopted. Or that there's more than enough, so on and so forth. And that's the God that we serve, is an abundant, generous God. And he's not a God of not enough. He's not a God of just enough. He's a God of more than enough manna from heaven, more than enough fishes and loaves, more than enough is what we get to receive. When we love each other, the world will know. Wrapping that up in John 17, all coalescing within these cause groups. So ultimately, what's this all about? In the solidarity way, More Than Enough has these 4 goals that we rally around, and all of our different organizational missions kind of fall underneath these 4 goals. More Than Enough will look like whatever More Than Enough looks like in your case. So here's kind of just an image of what the child welfare cause group looks like in our region, in Greater Dayton. So I meet with the director of children's services. I ask him, what do you need? He kind of gives me these long statistics. We talk about it. And then we talk about the existing puzzle pieces and the missing puzzle pieces and the efforts that are going on right now. I'll explain that in the next slide. So ultimately, all of these folks are trying to build things to care for people. CASA needs more CASA volunteers. Replanted Ministry needs more support groups, thus more support group leaders, more people to help cook, more people to watch kids, more people to facilitate the conversations. Coalition of Care needs more care communities or wraparound support teams to increase the retention rate from 50% to 90%. That needs 8 people surrounding. More Than Enough means as a unit saying to the body of Christ, this is what we need. Here are the 10 on-ramps. Here they are. Would you like to try to walk up one of those? So that's what we try to do as a cause group. And whatever cause you're in, there will be many expressions of how somebody can unleash the latent love inside of them in terms of time, talent, and treasure to help move the needle within each movement. Trust. This lineup here has so much to do with trust. That is the currency of the efficiency of a cause group. When there's mistrust, there's not a free flow of information. When there's trust, there's a free flow of information. And trust, based on someone's family of origin, their pain, their recent experiences, can be so hard for people to do. You know, trust-based relational intervention, I think, is one of the best child welfare healing modalities. It's all about trust. How can we increase the level of trust? Collaboration requires relationship, requires trust on high quality time. So how can high quality time increase trust? But how can we lean into trust and try to understand it a little better? Again, so thankful for the More Than Enough team. They kind of developed this 5-point More Than Enough building trust together sheet. So 1 through 5. I'll just give an example. Number 1 is when I'm confused about something you've said or done, I'll choose to believe the best. When hard things happen between us, I'll come directly to you. These are difficult things, but it's also the way. Imagine traveling together, with Jesus and the 12 and the others. There had to be a high level of trust between them, and trust had to be built. So another really useful tool that I found is this guy, David, and his team with the Trust Edge Institute. For 25 years, they have been doing research on trust and what it is. And the argument is that all issues are a trust-based issue, which I would, tend to agree with. Their book, The 8 Pillars That Drive Results, to become a trusted leader, develop trust, are really important because what they say is that, trust is a couple of things. They say 8 things. And it's not just, do I personally trust you, or do I functionally trust you in your ability to perform? There's 8 different trust measures. One of them is competence. One of them is consistency. Are you going to do what you say you do? Are you clear? So on and so forth. So I would check out that resource because, again, we want to help to build an ecosystem of when trust is kind of like, we can help to not shoot energy towards mistrust, but fix it so that we can continue the trust building, especially over time. Now, I'm going to share with you then now the vision. Again, this is all me. Is that unified Dayton, similar to city transformation spaces throughout the country, may help to try to catalyze or access and support and encourage these different cause groups. So, I'm co-leading the Child Welfare More Than Enough space. There are many more to be uplifted and extracted. I'm trying to help find the catalytic leader for the recovery world. Faith Tech is a global convener of techies that leverage their skills for the kingdom. They have 7,000 people within their network. Youth, spiritual. I have a toolbox of 35 different headings of different cause groups that could come together. Ultimately, this place again is where you can find your people. So the question is, what's your cause? And what I'm really asking is, what's your cause group? And then I'm asking, who's your people? And who's leading you? And what's your more than enough goals and vision? And how do you fit? Because ultimately, this does come down to the individual. So this is a QR code and I'll put a link in the description to kind of help you access inside of you a dream or a vision or a cause, or to expose what your cause group is. Maybe it's leadership. Maybe it's, I don't know. I have a long list. But, if God gave you a blank check, you said, my beloved, what would it be? What would you do? How would that help move the needle within any cause? And just like that, it says there's an app for that back in the early days of the iPhone. I do believe that there's a group for that, or could be. Could be gaming, could be whatever. I believe that there could be a group for that. And in the same way, there's a toolbox and there's a tool for that. So in my context, I was like, what helps the retainment of foster parents, since 50% quit within the first year? Well, I found this wraparound support team called the Care Community. There's 1,600 in the United States, and it helps increase the retention rate to 90%. That's an awesome tool. What I've found, you can see over here, is I have a list of maybe 40 or 50 tools with all in these different subcategories. So not only is there a tool for maybe what you care about, the cause that you care about, but there's probably a toolbox for that, which is lived out and embodied within a cause group. And not only that, it's interesting to know what tools do you have within your region that you may not know that you have, or which means people that are doing the thing that you think is super cool and you just don't know them. But it's also interesting saying what tools are missing. So what tools are missing might mean what is going on in other parts of the country that they're trying to scale or we could draw down, and we need to find a leader to help implement that tool within a cause group. Again, all of this is to what end? We're not doing this just to be puppies in a box licking each other. That's high sociability. We're here to accomplish a mission together. Again, we're trying to be in that communal space of sociability and solidarity. And this is how I think about a region. On one side of the cliff is all of these stats of suffering and stories of healing. You might be someone that has seen a stat of suffering and responded. I would say that you would be in the 10%. There's also other people that are probably doing that thing or have similar tools or engagement. And then on the other side of the cliff is all of this, what I call latent love. all of this time, talent, and treasure that's waiting to be unleashed um, into the world to help that the stories of healing increase and the stats of suffering decrease. So what needs to happen is a super highway needs to be constructed to unleash that latent love. And that's what myself and many other people are working on, with one of the key things that we're trying to implement are these sustainable cause groups, because we believe that the power and the density of them helps to decrease, you know, it would increase the number of people caring for single parents and increase the number of support groups, and it would decrease pain and suffering. That, but how to do that efficiently and effectively. One other analogy is saying, do we have what this actually looks like? So this is a puzzle analogy. For your cause, do you have the box top? Do you know what heaven on earth looks like within the world of child welfare? And then you begs the question, do you have all the pieces? And then do you know how to put the pieces together? So for us, you can see here the yellow are the puzzle pieces that are existent in our area, and the red is what's non-existent in our area. It's important to assess those things within any sort of cause to see what other puzzle pieces do we need to turn over and see, oh yeah, that's a part of our part of the puzzle. Scaling latent on the unleashing of latent love requires individuals going on an exploratory process. And I'm going to explain this really quickly. We all have this capacity inside of us, this latent love. Now, we need a process to help discover that. That can be verbal, relational, we can meditate on it, self-reflect, or we can be guided in technology, or we could do all three. Once we discover that capacity, we can explore where we can put that capacity, what latent love is waiting to come out of us. And after we explore our options, then we commit. That's the ideal. If I care about youth, here's 4 youth mentoring organizations, and here's someone else within my friend group that wants to mentor. We are going to commit to, for the next year, with this youth mentoring organization, once a month to do tutoring. That's a commitment. That helps us live out the legacy of love that we're trying to enact, and doesn't rely fully on our feelings or emotions to help get our feet moving and stay in that place, because that is very fleeting. But after our commitment for a season, we explore again. That youth mentoring comes to an end, the support group comes to an end, etc. We explore again, and then we recommit. We take what we've learned and recommit our latent love to something else in time, talent, and treasure. And I'm just sharing this because this is the kind of process that I'm trying to work with different players in the tech space that are all thinking the same thing, but at creating tools and expressions to do that in different ways. So this won't happen without technology, I believe, and it's going to take multiple technologies. So it's helping. If the art of gathering helps to densify networks through gatherings, then how can technology help people find each other, help nodes find each other, and then how to increase the thickness of lines between gatherings using technologies that ultimately tries to get us face to face. So I'm one catalytic leader within the More Than Enough child welfare space. It is in a discerning process to find my second, because Jesus sent people out 2 by 2, so I'm looking for that. In the addiction and recovery space, I believe it needs to be 2 by 2. Same thing with technology, youth, caring for spiritual leaders, caring for domestic abuse. You see all these black dots? These are all 2 by 2 catalytic leaders. This is convening in this kind of way is not necessarily easy, but I believe it is the way in my perspective. Thus, we need to be a community of catalytic leaders that commits to each other to share how we're walking out the densifying of our networks. So looking for a sage, an elder, a wise person, a convener that is committed to nurturing us as a community, I believe is that next layer up that is vital. So if someone says yes to densifying and networking, to being one of those two leaders, they're saying yes to nurturing and loving and caring for that community, but they're also looking around and saying, yes, we are co-captains that are trying to build this, to build these dense networks together side by side. And ultimately, as I believe these things come to fruition, oops, I didn't know what that next slide was. So this next slide is that ultimately I'm going to pass down at some point the leadership or the mantle uh, of this cause group to somebody else. And so day one, I am thinking about succession. This is another Peter Greer book. Day one, I'm preparing for the baton pass off, which is something of vital importance that I feel like a good leader of us leaders will steward well. The quote that is really convicting is that you, me, everyone, every leader is an interim leader. One day we will all leave our roles, and the question is whether or not we will be prepared when that moment arrives. If you are not planning for this critical juncture, this moment of transition can derail an entire organization or movement. And only 17% of organizations plan for this. So, thinking A to Z, within any cause and with stuff, this, in my estimation, has to be a part of the conversation. It's how long am I going to steward and love on this group as I'm trying to look. This is disciples discipling disciples, is finding that next leader in teaching and training and grooming them of what it's like to hold this kind of delicate and vitally important space. And when we do this, I believe that the John 17, this is the practice of John 17. This is the world will know that Jesus came when they love each other. I've given them the glory that you gave me. We see glory in each other. We cheerlead, we support, we care for each other, we nurture that, we celebrate each other's souls, we see each other, know each other, seek to love each other in the most appropriate ways. To be that agapetos to each other, that to share in that agape love, that is freedom. It is liberating. And when the body of Christ works together as one, because it can very much feel like we're a disembodied body, but as we become the body and we densify, I think we will see that like that is a vision of kingdom in heaven in abundance as we walk it out. So thank you so much for listening and being with me. I'm going to put a lot of notes into the end here. I would love to hear from you, hear some feedback, for you to fill out a survey, to have some bounce back. Again, this is just iteration number one, distilling. I know this is long. It's kind of the process of creativity is to diverge and then converge. So if you're watching this, in my mind, you're a catalytic leader that you would hopefully hear this anyways at some point in some sort of boot camp or training or conversation. And you're just trying to hear it in this synthesized way and maybe hear it a couple of times, and see what God does with it. See if you're called to it. So thank you so much. I'm so thankful for your attention, and I'm excited to see what happens next. Take care, and you are good.